Hey y'all, and welcome back to another video of My Creative Life with Kelssweetie, where we read books and we make art. And today we are talking about my July wrap-up. My wrap-up for the Tarot Readathon. Again, thank you so much to Deja, as well from Deja's Book World, as well as Noelle from Noelle Pages, for allowing me to be a part of this year's readathon. Honestly, I had such an amazing time, both like doing the post over on Instagram. It was great to kind of just only focus on things that had to do with tarot and psychic and all of that. I think that it was just so creative to work with. And then also I read so many books. Now, not as many books as some people on our team. Some people were like, oh, I read 48 books this month. Oh, guys, I only read 24 books this month. Oh, guys, I read officially 8 books this month. And that's a lot for me. I think that's the most I've read in a month so far this year. So far, being back into reading and all of that, 8 books in a month for me is a lot. So anybody out there who's on my team who was like, I only read and you got a double digits, you're doing better than me. You're amazing. You're a star. You're doing amazing, sweetie. I did read 8 books. I have 3 currently that I am reading, and I had 1 DNF this month. So it is, grab your waters, grab your drink of choice, grab whatever you're body doubling while you're watching me on here and get it, because today's video is going to be a long one. It is going to be stuffed. I am going to try my best to get this under an hour, y'all. I know I run my mouth, but I'm trying to get this under an hour because I know nobody wants to hear for longer than that. I absolutely understand that. So let's just get into this intro and we're gonna get straight into these books. As I said in the intro, this month I was a part of Team Cups for the Tarot Readathon that's hosted by Noelle and Deja. I truly was surprised that they asked me to be a part, but I absolutely loved it. My other teammates were Sarah from Wicked Reading, or Wicked Scorpio over here on YouTube, as well. I think she's Wicked Reading on YouTube and Wicked Scorpio over on Instagram. Sorry if those two things are switched, Sarah. And Deja from Deja's Book World. It was just fantastic to be a part of the team and to be in the Discord and chat with y'all and give out recommendations and see how much y'all are reading. Y'all are amazing. We won the Major Arcana trophy. I'm so happy we won anything. I know that when we started the month, we were like, we're trying to get all 3. Little did we know, Team Pentacles had that thing on them because they won the Minor Arcana trophy by a landslide. And that's how many pages you read every month. We just weren't big book readers, as you can see, and as well as they won the Hero's Journey trophy, which they really did the slow and steady with pulling a card every single month, which I love that for them. I completely forgot to pull a card for myself every day this last month, which I really wanted to do, and then the month started. So that didn't happen, but I really did absolutely love doing this challenge this year, and I read so much, and I read so much good stuff. Now, we are going to get into the fact that a lot of what I read, while I loved, and there were a lot of 4s and 3.5s and stuff this month, and I ended the month on a 5. I will say that some of them didn't stick to the landing. I did mention that the last month I ended with a 5, and it was a physical read. I know, I love that for myself because I never get to physical read, y'all. I'm just way too busy. But I also have so much already in progress going into this next month, which I love that as well for me. I've kind of gotten into this thing where I'm like, if I don't finish it within that last month, then it's over. I can't read it anymore. Luckily, I feel like the other books that I have in progress right now still work for August's Artist Appreciation Month theme. So I'm happy about that. But we did only have 1 DNF. But again, the power of the DNF, because if I had slogged through that, I wouldn't have found that 5-star. So let's get into these books. We got a lot, so let's get it moving. My first in progress read going into August is When We Were Real by Daryl Gregory. Thank you again to Saga Press for gifting me this copy. I absolutely love how it looks, of course, but the whole synopsis of this has to do with this new future, this parallel future where a lot of these monuments and stuff have popped up, and it's basically been revealed that it's all an illusion. We're just living within an AI program, basically, the Matrix, essentially. And a friend and two friends are basically on a bucket list journey because one of them is sick, I think, with cancer, and they're just trying to see all the greatest wonders, AI wonders of the world before they pass, essentially. And it's to get them out of the house and to get them going and to, kind of get them through life. And again, it's very bucket list. Seven of Hearts was the card that I pulled for this one, to pick multiple books and blindly pick one from the pile. So I picked out a couple of books, and this one was one of them, and they were blind. I picked this blindly out of that pile. So this was one of them. I did not finish it, one, because it was near the end of the month, and it was a 13-hour audiobook, and I was trying to get in one last read for my team. So I knew I wouldn't finish this in time for the end of the readathon, and I wanted to make sure I got in one more read. So it's great. I'm still moving through it. I'll probably finish it sometime in August, but it just didn't fit for me trying to read it at the end of the month. That makes sense. Okay, so in progress. Another in progress read is Jim Carrey's Memoirs and Misinformation. This I'm also carrying into August because it does fit my August TBR theme, which has to do with Artist Appreciation Month. This is kind of a faux memoir that it has Jim Carrey, but it's not really a memoir about Jim Carrey's life. It's more of a metaphor for some of the things that have happened in his life. I think I did kind of burn myself on this one because I read too many reviews beforehand. So while I do like to see people's reviews and stuff on books to make me read them, I try not to go too deep into a bunch of reviews and recommendations. I try to get like maybe one or two or something before I read it because I want to go in blind enough where I can experience it for myself and not get tainted by somebody's experience from it. Eight of Spades on this one, which is the Garden in my Lenormand deck. And the Eight of Spades, which is Eight of Swords, was read a book from a genre you don't typically read, and that was memoir. So I still want to try and read this. We will see. I heard some of the things that were said were some things that I kind of already figured going into it, but I think hearing it, it was a whole nother thing, and that was that it wasn't a memoir. The writing was a little more chaotic than necessary. There's not a true through line, and a lot of people left it kind of going, what did I read? It felt like a word salad of a book. And nothing that was that crazy moving. But then there were some people who did. But then again, I think some of them were really big fans. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really a flip on whether or not I enjoy this. But I really do want to try it out. And I think it still is perfect. And I had originally planned on reading it for August anyways. So I'm going into August picking this up. Now moving into my DNF of this last month. And that was The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. So I hated that I had to DNF this one because I really did like this idea of living in this liminal space where there is a city in a valley that's, I think, 10 or 5 years or something like that back in time. What is it, 5? 20 years, sorry. 20 years back in time, and one is 20 years ahead in time, and having this kind of liminal space and us following Odie. I think Odile. I love the idea. I think even the plot is probably fantastic. However, I think what happened with this one is the same thing that happened with The God of the Woods, which is a thriller or mystery that everybody read last year. I even got an ARC for that, and I really tried to read it, and it really just was not capturing my attention whatsoever. I even had the audiobook for it, and I still wasn't catching my attention. This is the same that's happening with this, which is very interesting considering the covers are very similar for both of those. One, I didn't know that it was kind of a French countryside. That's what I'm getting from this, is like a European countryside based off of the names and how they're kind of speaking to one another. And there's something, it's not exciting enough for me. It's very literary fiction, very, very much so. So again, it's not because I think that it's horrible or that it was bad. For me, though, it was too slow. It was far too slow, and I think I only got 10% into it, and 10% felt like 25%. And considering this one, again, was a longer audiobook, which I was surprised by considering it's how big it is. It was like 12 hours. I did not see myself like really finishing this quickly for this month. And aside from feeling like I was going to finish it quickly, I just felt like I was going to slog through it, and it might put me in a slump because of how slow it is. So starting the month, I You guys all saw me pull this one on camera, and that was Megan Giddings' Meet Me at the Crossroads, which went with my Queen of Diamonds, which was the Queen of Pentacles for tarot, and it's the Crossroads card, coincidentally. And that one had the prompt of read a book with a strong female protagonist, which this worked perfectly for. Megan Giddings, top 5 author. I think she just gets me. She absolutely gets me. Her references I understand entirely. Her main characters I feel myself within. While I didn't absolutely think that like Ayana was perfectly a fit for me, I did feel a lot of similarities between me and herself. Not as much as I did as Joe from The Women Could Fly, but this was amazing. I think it's hard to explain what goes on in this book, and I think from its synopsis, I thought that it was one thing and it ended up being something entirely different, which I love though. I thought that originally this book had to do with AI. It doesn't. It actually has to do with conversations of spirituality and these doors of liminal space. They show up everywhere. And inside of them are these worlds and spaces that either allow you in or boot you out or whatever the case is, and it's written so visually in a way that you're just kind of along for the ride. And a lot of it, I think at some point, and some people have talked about this, you're not certain on whether or not what's really happening. This book, however, very much ghosts. It has to do with ghosts. And I think next year when I do the I Love Black Horror readathon, this will be showing up during Ghost Week for sure, because I loved how she really spoke about spirits and ghosts in this. It wasn't, I think that in a lot of ways, this book didn't feel like a ghost story because it didn't feel like a haunting. And it also didn't feel hokey in the sense of speaking to spirits or anything like that. It felt like how we naturally do speak with spirits and ancestors and all of that, which is in a very, you're not certain until it's happening type of thing. Ayana, our main character, is dealing with a lot of depression after her sister, her twin sister, ends up passing while within one of these doors. There's a lot of conversation about family dynamics. Her mother blames her for her sister's death, and she liked her sister better. And it's very clear that that's the case and everything, and she never gets over it. We don't get it. We actually get a lot of silence between the two of these characters, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Ayana goes off to college, and this really is a conversation about found family and reaching that point during your early 20s, especially as a Black woman, and leaving your assigned family, going off to college, and finding this group of people who understand you better than your family ever did. I related a lot to that. I love that because each one of her friends had their own traumas and issues that they clung to each other for, and not in a toxic way either, in a very natural way as well. And it wasn't, oh, we all just all of a sudden were friends overnight or anything like that. I feel like there was so many nuances in here that felt relatable and I loved, and I felt like it nearly had me. I feel like this was nearly a 5-star book. I think I ended up giving it a 4.5. The reason why is because I do feel like there were moments where Megan Giddings maybe got a little long-winded in her conversations, and you would kind of lose the plot, but you'd get right back to it. And a lot of those moments are because she's trying to explain how much Ayana feels like a liminal space herself. She feels like she's just floating around after having this depression regarding her sister, who she's still looking for. She's not trying to believe that she's dead. She's trying to believe that she's still somewhere on the other side and that one day she may find her again, because she's constantly hearing things from the other side, because she had spent time on the other side. That's why she can hear spirits. So there are a lot of those moments in here where she's just keeping her heart out for her sister to come back. But meanwhile, she's lost who she is as a person because of all of this and because of her feelings and her mourning. I really loved it. Megan Giddings is an autobi author for me, and now I have to read Lakewood, and once I do that, I would have read basically everything she's published. So I need to get on that. At some point, hopefully this year, I can read Lakewood. But I really did love this. It was a 4.5 for me for sure. Mayfly was my next read by CJ Lead, and I had been wanting to read this for quite a while. This was for 10 of Spades, which is 10 of Swords, and that was read a book featuring a murder, which was very easy for me as I read tons of thriller and horror, and so this was perfect for that as we're following woman who may fly, who is basically a frozen princess at Disneyland, which they never say these things, but which is hilarious to be honest, because you're reading it all basically knowing that's what it's talking about. And she's a serial killer. She's got serial killer thoughts. It's American Psycho. I absolutely understand why people compare this to American Psycho. I definitely feel like it is very Patrick Bateman for sure. Here's my thing. I think y'all are hyping this book up a little bit too much. Personally. Now, I said this on Instagram and it was very interesting having said that, because I did have quite a few people go, okay, I'm glad somebody else said it. It's not that I didn't enjoy reading this book, but I've seen a lot of people say that they love this book, and I think it has a lot of issues with it, to be honest. I think that, sure, it's enjoyable from a point of view of just like murders and thriller and all of that, but as somebody who's constantly reading horror books because she's like, it's an allegory, it's all an allegory, this is all metaphors, I was looking for the metaphor in here, and while looking, I realized a lot of things that I had an issue with, and I'm not certain. And it's in this weird place where I'm like, is it an issue? If CJ Lee knew what she was doing with doing these things, genius. This may be a 5-star because that's genius. But if she doesn't, then it's a 3. And I think that I still have to read American Psycho. But if CJ Lee honestly was trying to take a lot from like what we got from American Psycho and Brett Ellison, and how Patrick Bateman is constantly talking about he's a pop culture aficionado and all these facts and stuff that aren't real. Like some of them aren't true, like he's off by years or it wasn't that band or whatever. But you only know that if you're actually an aficionado at it, and it was supposed to be like this conversation in regards to white men and their superiority complex, even when they're not masters at things that they think that they're a masters at, and people allow them to be because of it. If that was the case, then CJ Lee knocked this out the park. It was amazing. And I think that, but I don't know. I have no clue. And for that reason, that's why it sits in this, it's a 3, it's a 5, it's possibly a 5 territory. Because if she does, then I'm like, oh, bravo, you knew what you were doing. If she doesn't, then this is a 3. Now, get into what my problems are with this. One, by the ending, it turns to a romance novel, like a dark romance type of situation. Which I'm kind of like, we get a serial killing woman and she's still looking for love. And the other thing is that later on this month, I did read a book that had to do with a serial killing woman who was looking for love, but it was written in a way where it was like she knew that about herself. And this one, Maeve the entire time goes, yeah, no, love is for suckers. And then near the end, it's like, oh my God, he was the one type of thing. And I'm like, we're 10 pages out and all of a sudden that's where we're going. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I felt like it was a latch stitch type of thing that I was like, I preferred you when you were a heartless bitch. You know, excuse me, but that's how I felt. The other thing that was very interesting for me is that this is supposed to be a love letter to LA. As somebody who has lived in LA 13, 14 years now, and it has become my home, it has become a place where I absolutely love it, and I've become an adult here, this was very white. And arguably some of the worst parts of LA. Some of the worst situations of LA. Some of the parts that make LA horrible. Not even amazing. Not even the best parts of it. Maeve is obsessed with Sunset Boulevard, which if you've ever actually been to Sunset Boulevard and not just on a tourist trip, like, oh, this is my first time here, so it's so new, I'm seeing all these bright lights, I'm visiting from wherever, but actually go to Sunset Boulevard, it's dead. It's absolutely dead. And it's unfortunately, it's a ghost town of a time when Sunset Boulevard, yeah, sure, represented plenty of amazing things and the birth of all these different things and rock and roll, and where artists in the 70s and all of this were alive in this space, and the 80s were alive in this space. Now, you avoid it at all costs. If you ask anybody, and she's not an LA native, let's keep that in mind as well. Maeve is not from LA. She is from Nebraska, I think. So she is a Midwest princess, but she loves Sunset Boulevard. She spends the majority of her time over there. And not only does she spend a majority of her time over in Sunset Boulevard, which she loves, she talks about it all the time, her loving Disneyland, which, don't get me wrong, I went to Disneyland for my birthday earlier this year, and Disneyland is a place where you go to disappear from everything else ever happening outside of its walls, because you can. I know people who are some of the most down people ever. They love going to Disneyland because you can't even really use your phone there, and it's a world all of its own, and it's a place to self-regulate. And for people who realize that is what it's for, I have no problems or qualms with you enjoying Disneyland because you need that space. Don't get me wrong. Is it a place of absolute capitalism and some of the worst things in the world? Sure. And that's where I feel like Maeve isn't going there to self regulate. Maeve loves it because it is a land of make believe, and that it's people knowing it's a land of make believe and still going there anyways. And she loves LA because it is a place where people put on these masks and all this everything, and they're being honest. And she goes, it's because people are honest about putting on their masks when everyone everywhere across everywhere globally put on a mask 24/7, but LA gets crap for it because it knows it's doing that. I don't want to I think parts of LA do that. I'm not going to sit here and say LA doesn't do that. That's a lie. Parts of LA do that. Very much so. This is coming from somebody who just came out of music industry. All right, and is in the book industry now and still is dealing with that. People are constantly putting on plenty of masks in certain spaces in LA. However, there is a good part of LA as well that do not put on any masks at all. And it's truly, that is how they are. And it's outside of the commercialism and the lights and the shows and the music and the movies and all this other stuff that's quote unquote glitz and glamour. Those parts are definitely masks. And those are the parts that Maeve loves the most. At no part do we go past 10. We do not see Watts. We do not see Compton. We do not see East LA. We do not see South LA. We don't even make it down. We don't even go downtown. We only basically go in the Hollywood Hills. That is the only place we really are. Other than the Hollywood Hills, we're out in the OC Anaheim area where Disneyland is. Why is this a problem? Let me tell you. One, in order to get to Anaheim, you have to go past the 10. And considering that Maeve has to go past the 10 every single day because of where she lives in the hills and she has to get to work, it's crazy for her to sit there and act like this part of LA doesn't exist. When this part of LA, and I'm saying this because I live past the 10, makes LA LA. You never hear about any people of color in this book. There's a possibility that there's one person of color in this book, which is one of her new managers over at Disneyland. But other than that, we hear nothing else about people of color. It's only white people in this book. It's only mainly straight people in this book. The only moment when we have where it feels like, oh, they're queer, is either in the conversation of the stereotypes of it or her being somewhat bi-curious before man. LA is queer. So that's weird as well. There are no Latinos in this book. There's none of that in this book. And even the fact of her from driving from the Hollywood Hills to Anaheim every single day for her job, that's a 2-hour drive. There's no traffic in this book. Like I'm still moving through this book and I like it, but I'm also just like at odds with it, is because I'm sitting here and I'm wondering if CJ Lee knew that writing this book, writing this version of LA with all of these issues that anybody who's actually from LA would point out in a second and go, that's not real. That's idealized. That's actually the worst part of LA, the worst portions of LA. Then she was smart because she proved how fake Maeve's idea of LA and what she loves about it is. And that, in all honesty, she's just some girl from Nebraska who doesn't really know anything about reality and is faking the funk of who she is as a person, period. But if she doesn't, then I'm kind of like, okay, CJ Lee, have you ever been to LA? And what part of LA are you in? And I don't know if I like this because it actually goes against a lot of things that I'm constantly fighting on telling people that LA is great for, but you just like idolize it in this book. I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to not know. Because again, if this is supposed to be like American Psycho, then that's exactly what CJ Lee wanted me to do. I haven't found any evidence online to say that's what it was. And I think that's the reason why I keep on questioning it, because I've not seen any interviews with CJ Lee where she goes, yeah, that's what I was going for, or any confirmation of it. So I have to question that because I don't want to make it better than what it is. Because if it's not that, then it's a 3 maybe. Honestly, in my review, I think I said a 2.75 or something, because that's a lot of discrepancies that I don't like. But if not, then it's somewhere at like a 4.5 then for me. I don't know. But that was my experience with Mayfly. I know that was a lot, but yeah, again, I just feel also like I one thing I can't get past is the ending. I was upset with the ending, to be honest. I did have fun reading it though, and that at least is why it's still in the mid type of category for me, regardless of what her intention was. After reading that very confusing book, I finally got to When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. Y'all know I'm a Nat Cassidy fan. Nat Cassidy is an auto-buy author for me, and he doesn't miss for me personally, and this was amazing. It made me cry. I cried. I literally, midway through this book, I cried my eyes out. Now, the reason why it was not a 5, it was a 5-star experience. I already said this on my review for this on Instagram. It was a 5-star experience, but it was not a 5-star writing type of situation because the ending didn't hit for me. I was too kind of lost, and it was after crying, I was expecting a gut punch of an ending, and instead it left me with too many questions, to be honest. We have our main character who is freaking out because she works at some diner, some seedy diner. Some guy like used a needle in the bathroom. She goes to which, if you've read Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy, then which was his last before this, then you know, a little Easter egg from his last novel. She ends up getting stuck with a needle, and she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know if she's okay. All of that. Which that was an issue for me. I'll get to in just a moment after the synopsis. She comes home, she finds this kid. Apparently, his dad or something was looking for him. He's afraid of his dad. His dad's a monster. They go on the run. Nearing the end, there's a lot of conversation in regard to broken conversations of fatherhood and why a lot of us have issues with our fathers, and why fathers end up having these problems, or why they end up not meeting the brief for a lot of us in a lot of different ways as well. Love that. Cried my eyes out midway through this book. If you have any sort of strained relationship with your father, I feel like the situation in regards to our main character, what was our main character? Jess. Our main character, Jess, and her father, and the letters that her father tried to write for her, and she ends up finding, because he ends up passing without them fixing their issues. You will cry. You will cry, or you will feel something, because the conversation that he felt like he was just not good for her, or that he couldn't fix himself for her, or whatever the case was, when it was clear like all you had to do was just communicate. And that's all she was asking. And when she finishes reading these things, instead of having this moment of I feel bad for you or sympathy or whatever the case is, which she still has clearly, she just goes, I just wanted a father. And you put it on yourself to have the world and be Superman and all this other stuff. And I didn't ask you to be any of that. And I felt that. I felt that from a personal standpoint. And if you at all have those experiences with your father, even your mother, because even Jess's mom has her own downfalls on just trying to be her best friend 24/7 instead of being there for her as a parent, this book will hit you. It will absolutely hit you. And of course, Nat Cassidy came through with the afterword. In the end, was fantastic. I think what ends up in this book, instead of it just feeling like a horror, it felt like a thriller. It felt, and even Nat Cassidy says Terminator was one of the inspirations for this book, because you feel that she's basically taking this kid and she's trying to protect him. She has no reason to protect this kid, but she knows that she wants to protect this kid, and it was very 80s in a way. Some of the things that she got into. There is a scene in regards to Who Framed Roger Rabbit that was hilarious and wonderful and fun, and was something that I loved. I know that it'll be hit or miss for some people, but for me personally, I felt like it had a fun horror feeling to it that I'd never seen in read in a book before. So I absolutely love that portion as well. Now, this is why I really couldn't give it a full 5. Like, it's a 5-star, don't get me wrong. Highly recommend this book all day, every day. But writing wise, it was sitting at like a 4.5 for me. The ending had to do with her and her test results after being punctured with a needle. One, she waited too long, which the self-preservation was just out the door, which was very weird to me. I felt like that was strange throughout the entire book. The other thing is that by the end, you've got like 10 pages of her dealing with what these test results are and what's supposed to be the reveal at the end. Didn't have enough time to breathe for me and felt too instant as well and a little bit lost what it was trying to say. I think that the conversation of blood related diseases and AIDS or HIV or needles, period, in regards to even drug usage is a very weighted one, extremely weighted. And if you're going to use it in a book, let it be for a purpose. Don't let it just be something flippant that you're just like, oh, I just wanted her to be afraid of something. Make her afraid of anything else then. If it has nothing to do with any sort of allegory in regards to AIDS or HIV or drug use or any of those like very heavy drug use or anything like that, because it's a political statement. I feel that very deeply. I feel like needles and the use of them and blood diseases are a political statement because they are political in our everyday life. So if you use that and you're not comparing it to anything, then it feels like it's a dead spot for me. And that's what I felt like at the end. I felt like it wasn't saying something in regards to the character or a message or anything like that. And so it felt like you didn't need to make it that then. That gave me a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And again, where we went in the end kind of felt like an instant stop when you went through the entire book drawing out these emotions and these conversations and all of that, and in the end it just felt like, and we're done. She basically in 10 pages she has this mental breakdown, and then she figures it out in 10 pages, and it's like, what was there a deadline? I feel like after reading his afterword, I feel like this was the really closest emotional thing that Nat has a personal thing that Nat has written so far. A lot of his other books, like Mary and Nestlings and even Rest Stop, felt very much in regards to the world at large or his wife or his mother or friends of his or whatever. And this had to do with Nat's actual trauma. And that felt very personal. You can tell that in the nuances of what he's talking about in regards to fatherhood issues. This was not a card. It was actually for our significator card for that week. So this was one of the things that pushed us towards that major arcana trophy. My next read was one that I picked up actually in June, and it was because I finally wanted to watch the movie, but I'm somebody who wants to read the book before I watch the movie. Ever since my experience with The Shining, I cannot trust me becoming a fan of a movie and then reading the book and being absolutely disappointed. And that was Mickey 7. I picked up this book. This is the book that inspired Mickey 17. I picked this book because Mickey 17 was finally available to stream. I wanted to see it in theaters. Heard mixed reviews, said I'll wait for streaming. Picked up Mickey 7. Mickey 17 is not Mickey 7 at all. There's a lot that they took out that I think were some of the best things about this book. Now, keep in mind, I did rate this book around a 3. Like, this was a 3.5 territory for me. It wasn't like life-changing or anything like that. It was a fun time. I feel no way about it, really, to be honest with you. But it was a fun time. It wasn't like, oh, this is saying a lot or anything. I had a good time, but I also think that my idea of a sci-fi type of time, the height, Project Hail Mary. And because of Project Hail Mary really having that bar really high, or Dark Matter having that real high, and I mean, again, like, that's not space, but like, just what other ones do I have that's comparable? Dead Silence, or even like The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Like, even though that's like a completely different thing, a cozy sci-fi, it still is like a mass, like a huge high emotion type of thing. Dead Silence, which is like a horror, but it's a sci-fi horror type of thing. Again, very, very immense and high energy and emotions, and almost everything that I've read that I've given a try for sci-fi, I've absolutely loved. So I was like, okay, Mickey 7, looking forward to it. And it was mid. It was fine. It wasn't bad or good or anything like that. It was just good. And then I watched Mickey 17, and it absolutely was not the book at all. They took all the great parts out of it and they added in all this extra stuff to, I think, try and have a message. But it ended up having all of the characters sucked in Mickey 17. None of them had any redeeming qualities whatsoever, and the plot felt all over the place. Again, I just didn't enjoy it. Mickey 7 was cool. Now, Mickey was cool character. I enjoyed him. I think he had a laissez-faire attitude that I think has become very popular in really high sci-fi books, like like I said, Project Hail Mary or Andy Weir's work. Like, you could tell that Edward Ashton is most certainly inspired by Andy Weir's work because Mickey felt like one of those scientists. However, he is not smart whatsoever. He takes this job as an expendable because he's just trying to get off Earth because of a bad bet. And they're going to kill him. And so he's like, I gotta get off. I gotta get, it's not even Earth, it's like Asgard or something along those lines. I forget what the name, the next name of this planet is, because it's not Earth. And he ends up taking a job as an expendable. And even the person who signs him up for it goes, do you really know what this is? Are you an idiot? Like, why would you want to die over and over again? Like, you know you're gonna feel it. And he's like, well, I'll be cloned. So it's like, it's not the same thing. And how often will I die? So I appreciate that. I think it was funny in certain parts. Also, Edward Ashton was like, diversity, say less. Because there were many, especially listening to the audiobook, his girlfriend or the girl that he's into, you can tell that, and from, he even mentions her braids and stuff. So she's a Black woman. His best friend is supposed to be Latino. You can tell from his name. There's other like European scientists in here and everything. It's a fun time, and it's very, very diverse. What you don't realize is that this book all takes place over probably anywhere from maybe a couple of days to a week. That's it. So it's a very long book considering the time that you're reading about. And I would recommend it to somebody who's just like, hey, I'm just looking for a fun sci-fi, nothing that's going to like change my life, but I'm just looking for something fun and interesting on an idea basis, because I do think the worlds and the things that Ashton is bringing up in here are important, which is global warming and what we're doing to the planet and how we deal with relations as countries and as people, and all these things are being brought up in a way that I love, which is you're telling a fictional story but bringing up very real topics that inform the things that are happening in the book. And that happens throughout. That's how you're learning about the world at large, is through Mickey doubling back on why they're doing things the way that they're doing now, or why did they do this, or when this happened, or whatever, because he was a history teacher at one point in time. And I did love that, and that was enjoyable and that was fun. Again, I think that the ending was a little flat. Like, it was kind of just, and then I found out that it was part of a series, and I was like, okay, got it. I'm not going to read the series because I'm not invested enough, but I do feel like the ending was a little bit like, did you write it knowing it was going to be a series? Because it felt a little flat, but enjoyable enough. I don't recommend watching Mickey 17. I recommend you reading this book, and then if you read this book and then watched Mickey 17, let me know what you think, because I hated it. After reading this book, I felt like they just completely missed what this book was really supposed to be about. This did feed the six of spades. Yeah, it was six. Six of spades card, which the prompt for it was, which is six of swords. Read a book that has a journey. And they're on a journey to another planet. That's why I read this book. Next book, Harriet Tubman live in concert. I picked this book up, I'm gonna be honest, because it was by Bob the Drag Queen, which I thought was very interesting. Loved this cover. This is a great, fun cover. And I thought that it was at first a memoir about Bob the Drag Queen. And I was like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. I'd love to read that. Then I found out it was actually a fiction. And it was about Harriet Tubman actually dropping a rap album, which is campy as hell and hilarious. And I was intrigued. Now, before I get into this review, it did do the prompt for the Six of Clubs card. Read a book featuring politics or with political intrigue, which it's Harriet Tubman. And she's talking about her history and her past, and she's there with other freed slaves, or slaves that she's freed, and a Quaker, and her brother, which I was like, okay, so that's political all over it. So this is perfect. I think that Bobby Drag Queen had an amazing plot here. I think that it was well researched. I think it was very interesting. I think in some parts it was extremely funny. The Quaker, or DJ Quake, as he goes in the book, is a constant chain weed smoking Quaker who talks about being a Quaker. And I think it was very interesting because I didn't know much about Quakers, to be honest. Of course I know about them working with the Underground Railroad to free the slaves and all of that, but I didn't know much about being a Quaker. I think it was very interesting to learn that they kind of run their religion. They are Christians, but it's not a pastor goes up and he preaches the word of the Bible to you. it's kind of set up like a meeting, and people talk about what they've read. It's kind of like book club, and people talk about what they read and how it moved them and all of that. And I really love that idea, to be honest. I don't know, maybe it's the reader in me, but he was hilarious. I think learning more about Harriet Tubman's brother and their experience together and how she accidentally became a part of the Underground Railroad and this huge figure was really great to read about. Even reading about some of the other Freemans, which they're called, in her group, was also really fantastic. And I felt like it was extremely well researched. And I also feel like even our main character, I recognized a lot because he was like in his 30s, coming out of the music industry, which I did see a lot that felt very real, and everything on what happens in the music industry, especially with queer folks and people who are rappers, and especially men, black men within the industry, and the double standards that are within there. I kind of love that as well. I feel like we, and I hated saying this, and I'm just gonna put it out there. We needed a ghostwriter. I feel like Bob the Drag Queen's idea was amazing. However, his his writing skills were not there yet. I feel like with practice they will get there, and when they do, it's gonna blow us out of the water. I still feel like if Bobby Drag Queen writes something else, I would pick it up because I really do feel like they had something. Ideas were there, and thought processes and facts were there. But the writing, there felt like a lot of parts where it was repetitive in the writing, or it felt so trying to be relatable that instead these moments where he was handling the subject matter of Harriet Tubman kind of felt a little not reverent enough, irreverent. But the topic that they were trying to say, the situations, the very specific things being experienced by a Black queer person and millennial, were very real. This feeling of still having so much to fight for, yet also having these moments where you need to be checked because it's like you're standing in front of Harriet Tubman and you're complaining about something that's not you being a slave, you know, and having to be checked on that, or having to be checked on you don't know enough about your real history because they aren't teaching it to you. And if you're not going out and trying to find it, you're not going to. I loved all of those things, and that's why this was a 3 for me. I would recommend it to people, but with the addendum that Bobby Drag Queen is not an author, at least not yet. I think if they keep at it and they keep writing and they take a lot more like writing classes and stuff like that, absolutely, because the ideas and creativity and thoughts are there. I'm no like huge writer. I'm just a reader. But Tubman goes to our main character, which is y'all. I can never remember names. Which their name is Darnell. Darnell was just outed. He was a big hip hop producer, and he's still dealing with that. And you can see that he's still dealing with that while he's helping Harriet Tubman write this rap album. And is talking to them and learning more from them about what they experienced so they can write, have the best album ever. And I love that. I love learning more about these characters, and I think they were amazing and really unforgettable, the things that they were talking about and who they were. So, loved it. Had a great time. Bob Drag Queen, keep on writing. Just please keep on writing. I think by the 3rd book, or depending on how long it is until, you take some more classes and learn some more and all this other stuff and put out another book, I will pick it up. Because I really want you to keep on writing because the ideas here were truly original. Polybias. Okay, so this one was for the prompt 8 of Hearts, which was 8 of Cups. I originally pulled this for the nostalgia card that I mentioned earlier on that I ended up redrawing for, and it was this card that I redrew for, or I think I did musical chairs on it or something. But this was 8 of Cups, which was read a book that explores moving on or embarking on a new adventure. Coincidentally, I kind of stretched it on this one, but it did end up being about moving on. This has to do with a very real government experiment in the 80s, polybias. I know I'm saying it wrong, y'all. I know. Before anybody goes in my comments and is like, you're saying it wrong, I know I am. I've been saying it as polybias for so long before I heard the audiobook and heard how it's supposed to be said and everything. Since it is not a name or a language, I'm not really stressing myself out over it. It is polybias. I'm sounding it out phonetically. Okay, now that we got that out the way. It was a very real experiment where the government did these tests where they wanted to, if you played a video game, it would basically activate some aggressors in your brain. What ends up happening is that this experiment in technology ends up in a small town. They start playing the video game, small town slowly starts to descend into madness and serial killing and all of that. I heard from somebody during the readathon that a lot of people weren't reading this or had trigger warnings because of gun violence in here. Yes, there's absolutely tons of gun violence in here. I will say though, as somebody who reads horror and a lot of, darker stuff, I didn't feel like it was gun violence that was overtly so. And so I felt like I was overtly prepared personally for what happens in here. That's just me. There's a lot more violence in here than just guns. And I think the things that it wants to say are far more intriguing. And it isn't just simply everybody pick up guns or anything like that. I think it is a book that wanted to say more that unfortunately I feel like Colin Armstrong was able to get across. And that has to do with government mistrust, government. I feel like it was trying to do the same thing that The Loop did for me. And that is government mistrust, especially in small towns, xenophobia, small towns and idyllic ideas of these towns, newcomers, new ideas, changing ways of life, and everything. For the first half of this book, especially the first half, 3/4 or something of this book, I did feel that. And I thought it was interesting. But near the last quarter or so, they lost me. One, because one of our secondary main characters is a mixed black boy, and his father's a cop, a white man, and he's a cop. And his mother has passed, and I think that there's a lot of conversation in regards to him and his dad moving to this small town, which they mention in the book was not necessarily, it's during the 80s. And so it wasn't necessarily like, everybody's like gung ho about it at first or anything like that, but slowly but surely it's just like it becomes normalized in one way or another. It's obvious that there's many moments where Colin Armstrong wanted to have a conversation about race, but I'm from, looking at the cover in the back, he's a white man. And he didn't know how to have that conversation bluntly enough. I don't think that he really knew how to draw that conversation out. And I think it's also strange to have brought attention to that when this character is the only one of color in the entire book, as far as a main character is in at all. There are no Latino characters. There are no Asian characters. He's the only black character, the only character of color, in my opinion, throughout the entire book, which is strange to me. And then what ends up happening at the end to that character, as opposed to all the other characters, is pretty extreme. So I don't know. That kind of rubbed me in a weird position and is upsetting because the rest of this book felt great. I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of the books that I read, it was like idea is there, or the first 3/4 it was fantastic. The last portions just didn't hit. I don't know why. I felt like it was a deadline, or they didn't know how to wrap it up, or they built these amazing worlds and didn't know how to bring it all together. And that's what I felt like with this book. I enjoyed the first 3/4, and then we got to the last one, and it became a little bit word salad as we go back to this town where violence has taken over everywhere. And at one point, I wasn't even sure what was happening. But like going back to that conversation of gun violence, it became so bang bang and shoot shoot and stab stab that it was just like, what's happening? I know that there's a lot of violence happening and they're escaping it and they're moving through it, but I don't know really what's happening. It's just like arms are going everywhere. Like when you see like an old school cartoon or like Scooby Doo when they're like rolling down a hill or fighting each other in a group or something, and it's just a cloud of smoke with a bunch of different different arms and appendages going everywhere. That's what I felt like the last quarter of this book was just like there's nothing there, but you're getting the idea of what's happening in here. And that was the last quarter. And then I felt like the ending felt a little bit dry. It felt like it wanted to talk about grief, but it didn't really. And it didn't also really draw home the conversation of what this video game was to do. And that was that the government wanted it and created it. It had an idea of testing it in low income neighborhoods because they were like, well, people are going to think violence is happening in those neighborhoods anyways. Let's see how well it will work. We don't care. And I think that's a very big thing that they wanted to, it's a big topic that I think is a very important one, an interesting one in this context. And instead it was on a very white small town that this happened on. The other thing that I didn't really appreciate, there is a conversation in regards to our main character, what's her name? Andy. and her father, who has undiagnosed bipolar disorder. I didn't like how she approached that conversation. She really, really blamed him a lot, and in a way that I didn't feel right. He obviously was struggling, and yes, he was not diagnosed and he was not doing anything really for it. And it was very in this very masculine 80s, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm gonna act like there's nothing wrong with me type of way. But her response to it, and while yes, I understand she was like 16, 17, that's how old the kids are in here, I just didn't too much care for it. The author isn't. And again, I've said this before, I think that there are ways to write a character who is young or unlikable or whatever, and it not feel like your dialogue is within the character, or that you're just trying to prove a point with this character. Because then there was nothing else said about her actions throughout the rest of the book. So then it kind of read like, okay, and you wanted it to be that way. I don't know. I think that it was a bit of a letdown considering how much fun I was kind of having at the first 3/4 of it. And then literally when we got to that part that I just spoke about her seeing her dad, it went downhill from there because that happens and they go back to the town and the violence happens where the violent word salad is it's occurring, and the ending was lackluster, and I was like, you brought me into this book and I was loving it. It was like the loop. And then the ending just fell short for me. So I still gave this, I think it was like a 3.5 or something along those lines, because I did enjoy a good portion of it. And again, I don't feel like I didn't hate it. I'm not like feeling like, oh, I hate that I ever read this book or anything like that. If anything, I'm like, we were rooting for you, and that's why I feel the way that I feel about it. So yeah. The next one that I read that I was really surprised on how much I actually loved this by the end was Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Wang. So last year I read Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wang. Everyone in the world was reading that last year. And I picked this up because I did love it. I heard it was about art, the art world, and AI, and I was like, sign me up. I love it. What it had to say, I don't think that I was ready for, and I thought it would talk more about AI and the horror of AI, and it did, but indirectly, which I think was so smart and amazing. This has to do with our main character who is in love with Anka. Anka, and she's basically in love with Mathilde, who is an art school friend. They're both in art school. Anka usually focuses on a lot of AI or digital tech art, I would say, and Mathilde is kind of like an artistic genius. What I loved about this is how raw it was in its conversation. Oh, wait, before I get too far in, this was for 9 of spades, which was 9 of swords. Read a book with mental health representation, which absolutely is. Depression is rampant through here. But basically, Inca is in love with Matilda. You can tell that they're in love with one another. It's very, very queer coded. I don't think we never get there in the book, but it's very, very clear that they're in love with each other. And they're both in art school. And Anka kind of stands next to Matilda to kind of feel her sunshine. But Matilda's one of those extremely successful people who don't realize how amazing they are, how creative a genius they are, which for anybody who recognizes it is just like, what are you talking about type of thing. But what I did really love about this is that Wong really, really captured how toxic art school is, the art world is. It is a industry and an art form, a community that thrives on making art off of your trauma, trying to work through those things and recreate the human condition, so people can experience them. I mean, even, authors writing books, what we're doing here is all about trying to learn the human condition more. But some people exploit it. They make up traumas. I mean, as somebody who went to art school, I went to high school for art school and then I went to college for art school. Then took a job within the arts, which was for music industry. Left that, now is in the book industry. I mean, I've art has been my entire life, in one form or another, but in all of those forms, art and using trauma as a form of a moneymaker, whether it is intentional or not, some people, I remember going to art school and feeling like, you're making up a trauma. That wasn't a trauma response. You made art that was trying to fake trauma. And, in many situations, there have been many scandals in the art world where people have made up traumas that never happened in order to make pieces that people are like feeling for and everything. And it's an ongoing thing. And it talks a lot about that. But it also talks about the fact that artists are some of the hardest working people I know. Some of the most successful people I know are artists that push themselves and push themselves and everything. And I do think that there's a lot that goes into that. I think that some of it has to do with the fact that we're told from a very young age when you're an artist or you're into arts and you want to do that, you're going to be the starving artist trope or whatever. You're never going to make money. So of course there's a big thing that if you choose to do this, you're going to have to work your tail off in order to be successful at it, in order to do it for a living and survive in this capitalist society and everything. And you have people who go and they look at that art and they're constantly judging you and critiquing you as a person, as your emotions, how your work is. And because you're constantly in the space of critique, you are constantly critiquing yourself. You're never good enough. You're never creative enough. And that's what happens with Mathilde and Anka. Mathilde looks at Anka and is like, you come up with these ideas and stuff I could never think of and everything. And Anka looks at Mathilde and is like, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're fantastic, you're creative. Everyone in the world loves you. And there's this jealousy, this inherent jealousy that I feel like a lot of artists, whether they admit it or not, constantly have, because they're constantly looking at another artist and going, your work's amazing. What can I take from this and make my own? Because I want to experiment with this. I want to do this as well. I want to learn from this. But also, it can be helpful and it can be harmful. And Immaculate Conception really goes into depth about that experience and that feeling that's just constant uncomfortable. Now, I think I ended up giving this like a 4. The reason why is because I do feel like there are moments where we get way too deep into, and this was the same thing that I said about Meet Me at the Crossroads. There's far too much exposition. There's far too much languishing over this parallel universe where there's a lot of tech and it's futuristic, yet somehow seems present. And you start to kind of lose the plot a bit. Now, there are amazing parts of it where you're like, Anka's unhinged. Why would you choose to do that? Why are you doing that? You've led, and I love those portions, and I love the ending. There were just these bits and pieces that felt far too large for the novel and could have been taken out or pulled back or something along those lines, just so that it felt like every single chapter hit instead of feeling like you were kind of in this weird space where you're like waiting for the next thing to go. And that's what I experienced in Immaculate Conception. But I really loved it. I honestly, in some ways, I think I love this more than I love Natural Beauty. It's definitely sitting in the same space, but I feel like Natural Beauty also had these portions that didn't come to fruition. As opposed to this one kind of has these spaces where she kind of languishes on a little bit too much. In Natural Beauty, there were many points that I wish that we would have maybe explored a little bit more, actually, in order to really understand what these flashbacks were. What was she feeling, our main character feeling? And in that one, where we never get our main character's name, there's so much conversations about identity in Immaculate Conception. So I really, really love this. I recommend it. I think that a lot of people should be really loving this as much as we heard about Natural Beauty last year, but I think that people won't, because this is a very art heavy, like if you're an artist, this will hit you. If you're a part of the art world at all, this will hit you. But if you're not, it may be hard to grasp how impactful how like Ling Wang is talking about this space is. So absolutely loved it. Really do recommend you pick it up for yourself. The last book of July. We made it, y'all. We made it. That was Sugar by Mia Ballard. My first Mia Ballard. And I'm glad that I'm kind of reading in an order, that I didn't pick up Shy Girl first. I have a feeling Mia Ballard could possibly be up there with a Megan Giddings or definitely a River Solomon or something along those lines for sure. It's unhinged and wonderful and very femme. Sugar is amazing, y'all. I get it. I get the hype. It was a physical read. Y'all know I don't read physically. And I did it, y'all. This is going towards my book a challenge that I'm doing with my partner. This was a King of Diamonds, which is King of Pentacles. And the prompt was read a book with an unreliable narrator or villain. That was this right on the nose. It was perfect. I had so much fun reading this. And after an entire month of feeling like, the plot is there, or 3/4 of it is amazing, or the ending didn't hit, or you went too far in depth about the plot. This was perfect. It was so great because for the first 3/4 of the book, it is a little bit of a slow burn, but it's a fun one. Satara's unhinged. She's crazy. She's doing these things that are insane. She's killing men left and right. She just is looking for love and is constantly being hurt over and over again to the point of you've snapped, truly snapped. And then it hits about 50 pages out. and things hit the fan. There is a sentence that leaves you on like, it's like page 200. And I remember when I read it and I went, what? And the entire book changed entirely. And it was just go, go, go to the end. And I felt like it didn't let up off the gas until the very last sentence. And it explained everything and everything came together. And you feel just as shocked as even Satara is by the end. I feel like it was written perfectly. I had so much fun with this. This is absolutely a 5 for me. It possibly could be one of my favorite horrors of the year and everything. And I also felt like this was gory and horrific without being overtly so. It still had plenty of plot to it, which was fantastic. Satara, I mean, I don't want to give too much about it away because I feel like I now know why when people talk about Mia Ballard books, like when people have been talking about Shy Girl or Sugar, they just say that it's amazing and then it's unhinged and these bits and pieces of it. But I get now why they don't say a lot about it, at least not about Sugar, because by giving you too much information, it will ruin your experience of the book. And you definitely cannot talk about the ending because having that experience of moving so quickly to the ending is one you need. He ends up killing her husband. So that's, you get that from synopsis. He was having an affair with her best friend Lila. She ends up killing him. It's not the first time she's killed a man. It won't be the last. And basically it goes downhill from there as she tries to evade the police and detectives. And keep in mind that Satara is also on acid, like, and drinking majority of the time. This, I talked earlier in this book where Mayfly felt like it was this huge conversation about California and Los Angeles that felt very fake and not a real interpretation of it. This is taking place during the 70s in Orange County, and the way that the scene is set feels very relatable. You can definitely see it being Orange County, and it takes place in this very idyllic type of 70s because obviously all these different people and ethnicities and diversity is there, but we never really talk too much about, there's some things here racially here and there, but never anything too deep because it's not really the point of the story. It's not the main point. Really, the main point of the story has to do with genders and sexuality near the end. And personally, I do really love how Mia Ballard talked about it. I realized, I didn't know this before, it's a signed copy. I didn't know I got a signed copy, y'all, which I'm so happy about. Like, because I ended up loving this book. So, pick up Sugar, y'all. I know that everybody's reading Shy Girl right now, and they may be going to their back catalogs, and so many people are like, oh, I don't want to miss out on reading Shy Girl. Go back in her back catalog and read Sugar. This book is amazing. I had such a fun time. And again, this was a physical read, and I moved through this. So I cannot recommend it enough. It was a 5-star, and it was a perfect way for me to end my July reading. That is it, y'all. I am hoping that by the time I edit this, I'm hitting like an hour on the dot. I think it's very unlikely that'll happen. So please bear with me with this one being longer. Like I said, it was a long one. I did fit a lot into this. And I know in those beginning ones that had a lot in them, I was really getting in the weeds on the description. But I hope that you guys still enjoyed this wrap up. July was so much fun. As you can see, nearly everything I read, amazing plots. Amazing plots. Even though I had some issues here and there with endings, there was so much that I enjoyed reading this month and will probably stay in my, most definitely I can see staying in my library. So it did power me to get to August, which is going to be hard because it's a memoir month. And I'm glad that I had July to really be a great month to power me through August that I know will be a little bit more difficult. I'm hoping that it's not as difficult as it's feeling. But if it's anything like July was, I think I'm going to have a really great time. 8 books, y'all. And a couple in progress. We love that for me. It's fantastic. I'm really just, I can't say enough to Deja and Noelle for having me be a part of the readathon. It was so much fun being a part of sprints with Deja was so much fun, and yapping about books and over-consumerism and all of that. And I just had the best time, and I feel so great going into August. So thank y'all again for watching this very long video. I hope that you found some really great recommendations. If you liked today's video, please subscribe down below. I talk about plenty of books within all of these genres that we covered today, and I do have lengthy wrap-ups because I like to go in depth, but they're not always like this, and sometimes I have 20-minute book recommendations, which you can probably see from the rest of my channel. So please subscribe down below if any of that interests you. Please like today's video if you liked it, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.